We hope that you will learn from the message you are about to hear and to realize that books will inform, but the Bible has the power to transform you. Now sit back and open your mind and heart for God to speak to you.
My name is Clement Humphrey. I'm not Pastor Burnett. So today, as Pastor Burnett has been technically held up a little bit, so he is going to be on his way. We're getting ready to start our church service for this morning. So I'm just going to ask those who are here and those who are looking to us online that you can join us in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love, your kindness, your grace, your mercy that enable us to be able to come before your presence through your Son's blood that was shed for us. As we, Father, study your word and learn more about you, we pray, God, that you give us the wisdom and the understanding to comprehend everything that we studied. And may it not only be just knowledge-based, but it will be a daily life-changing experience that we will have. I pray, God, that as your manservant, Arthur, comes up to share again from your word, that we will learn something, oh God, and we'll be able to implement it within our personal lives to be able to live the way you want us to live. We thank you once again for those that are online and for those that are here, being able to share your word again and to study your word together. We give you thanks and praise in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. At this moment in time, we'll ask our brother Arthur to come up and share the word.
Hello. Hello, everyone. We'll continue with Book of Daniel, and this time it will be part 2, and in this part 2 we will explore the chapters 7 to 9. And just bear with me, I'll start it. So we'll just need to jump. I'll need probably. So we have Pastor Burnett with us. So we are good. Well, I'll need the support as much as I can get because the chapters 7 and sorry for sliding here. 7 and 9, they're quite challenging. And let's just first ask the Lord to help us with understanding of the chapters, with His Word, and enlighten us with the knowledge. Amen. So let's first look at the outline. What did we learn in the first 6 chapters? Just short recap. So first chapter, Daniel and his friends, they ended up in a Babylonian king court, and they refused to eat king's food in order to keep their law. Well, their law, of course, the Moses law. Then in chapter 2, we had statue dream. Remember the statue with the head of gold and silver chest and so on and so on. Then in chapter 3, we have fiery furnace trial, when the friends of Daniel were thrown into the furnace because they didn't want to bow to the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar erected. And then in chapter 4, we had a dream of a tree and how the king was humbled finally. Then chapter 5, writing on the wall, and it was a punishment of the following king of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, for his defiling of the vessels that we used in a Jewish temple before for worshiping. And then in chapter 6, we have the lion den. You all remember the story. Daniel was thrown to lion den, and God sent an angel to help him. Now, with that, we'll proceed to chapter 7 and 9. So now we're kind of back into where we've been a week ago. And again, we have now this time the vision. Daniel saw a vision in the first year of Belshazzar, meaning he's still in Babylon, meaning we're still in Babylonian times. So what does he see? He sees, we'll go sometimes by verses, and from time to time we will read, from time to time I'll just do recap, right? Because otherwise we just won't be able to fit into 1 hour. So we'll just, sometimes I will be rushing, and you can stop me anytime, say, okay, slow down, and let's maybe explore. So what he saw 4 winds of heavens that were stirring up the great sea. So great sea normally in the Old Testament is a multitude of Gentiles from all over the world. So great sea is not necessarily water, it's the amount of people. And then he saw 4 huge beasts were coming out of the sea. We see the verse 3. And the first one was like a lion. It had wings of an eagle. So the first one, lion looked like with wings. The second was resembling bear. And another one, the third, was like a leopard. It had 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So we'll just go over the beasts, and after that we'll get to explanations. And the beast number 4, awesome and dreadful and exceedingly strong, and it had huge iron teeth, and it had 10 horns. So just small recap for verse 7. 4 beasts. Now let's just look what these beasts are. So we'll just jump a bit to verse 17, because angel actually explaining to Daniel what the meaning of these beasts. So he said that these huge beasts, which are 4 kingdoms, which will arise from earth. So again, we see similar sequence that we saw with the statue. It gives us the perspective of not only of the present, but in terms of Daniel, of course, but also for the future. For us, it's easier. Most of these events already passed. For Daniel, of course, is not easy, because most of it is future, right? Plus, for us, it's easy because some smart people already processed the material for us. And Daniel was the first. I don't even understand how he felt at that time. Cannot imagine, right? All right. So in verse 4, again, the first one was like a lion, and it had wings of an eagle, until its wings were plucked, and it was taken from the earth, and it stood on feet like a man. And the heart of a mortal was given to it, probably. Now, I'm taking it from Tanakh. A version in King James could be slightly different, but not much. It's usually maybe some words I added to smooth it a bit, but that's just straight. So what is it? What is this lion? Well, I'll show you a fragment from Royal Ontario Museum, a lion with wings. I went there before Christmas, or actually during Christmas, with my daughter as my wife, and of course, where I go straight to antiquities, right? Because I like the old stuff. So I go straight to antiquities, and I found there a mosaic, a fragment of it from Babylon. And here it is, and it's from our Ontario Museum, Royal Ontario Museum. And that's exactly what it is. It's a lion with wings, you see it. So it's a Babylonian symbol. So we know the first beast is Babylon. So hooray to Ontario taxpayers to paying for it. All right, so we have Babylon, the first one. Now let's look at a little bit more into the first, and now I will proceed to the second beast as well. So why the first beast is black? Right, and that's a symbol that a ruler was humbled. And we do remember from Nebuchadnezzar, right, story. It was taken from earth and stood on feet like a man, and the heart of a mortal was given it. So we recall the story of Nebuchadnezzar, who had to live a mad life for 7 years, I believe, right? I remember as an animal to humble. Now, with lion we know it's Babylon. Let's go to the bear, the second one. We can already guess because for our it's easy. We remember the statue dream. Remember the statue dream, what was the number 2? Mid-Persian Empire, right? Same idea here. It's Mid-Persian Empire that came after Babylon. Huge empire that has even more territory than Babylon. Though it's not that flashy, but not that grandiose, but still very powerful. And also the scripture says that this bear had 3 ribs in its mouth. So it represents 3 military conquests. Capturing of Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. Yeah, for us easy, it was in the past for us. For Daniel, it was still future, right? Because he saw this dream during Babylonian time. Even after that, in years ahead, he lived also in Mid-Persian Empire. But about this conquest, he didn't know yet. They were for the future for him. Now the third beast, like a leopard, and it had 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given it. So for us, if we follow the same structure of the statue, next one was Alexander the Great, which is Greek Empire, right? So leopard had wings. It's a symbol of speed. So yeah, we remember who was the number 3 is Greek Empire. Now let's just look at its map. Hopefully it will show in a minute, because I understand the screen is a bit in delay. I'll just wait till it shows, so it will be easier for you. Greek Empire is captured even more territory than the Persian Empire had. It's extended to Egypt, which was part of Persian Empire too, extended even in today, you see in this pink color, everything. So that's why it's like a leopard with wings, because he was so fast. So it didn't take them hundreds of years. It takes just slightly more than a decade. They didn't get to India, though. They probably didn't want to. Okay, we have a problem with the screen, but I'll continue. Same sequence as in Nebuchadnezzar dream, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. So we're now in Rome. A symbol of power is represented. And so it would mean, and also the angel tells to Daniel that 10 kings will rise. So we can connect these 10 kings with 10 horns, so they're representing the kings. And then Daniel observes and sees that another horn comes up and plucks up 3 previous ones. So it looks like another king arises and removes 3 previous ones. And later king gets rid of the previous, as I stated. And then Daniel looks more starts to examine this speaking arrogantly, bragging. You can maybe read that sometimes it's written as blasphemies, but that's what it means, arrogantly or bragging. So similar thing we will see in, not today, but similar thing you probably know from New Testament Revelation. Very similar picture described by John. And de facto, it's very difficult to understand Revelation without reviewing Daniel. Now, interesting, in verse 9, Daniel describes thrones of God. Not one throne, but he described thrones of God. So multiple, right? Of course, we know why. Well, one is for Jesus, right? Well, now we know because we're familiar with New Testament, but imagine for Daniel, let's say he's under Jewish tradition, God is one, right? Even if we look at Old Testament, even in Genesis, there are hints that God is not that simple. He is more complicated. Even in Genesis. there is a statement which is, let us create him in the image of us. What does it mean? God talking to himself in plural? It's not, right? But this statement also exists in Tanakh. And interesting is, if you read somebody will say, oh, he was talking to angels. I'll say, well, it's very weird to talk to angels. When does he need help? God from angels. Let us create him in our image. It was a conversation between God Father, Son, and probably Holy Spirit, right? Definitely, he did need angels to play around, right, to create. But, the people, could be smart, but sometimes they're using their smartness to cling to their previous ideas, right? All right, so here again, we see that not singular throne. And then in version 10, we see the vision of judgment of the world, how it was presented to Daniel. New Testament, of course, gives even more details about it in Revelation, but Daniel get a glimpse on that time too. So again, he sees for us is the past, for him most of it was future for empires, and he gets also vision of the future judgment, which is very, very remote for him, still remote for us, it's still future. And what he sees in verse 11, the beast was slain and its body was destroyed and given to a flame of fire. In New Testament, Revelation 19 has absolutely identical description. So we see here that's how the revelation that was given to John is very, very much similar to what was given to Daniel. I mean, it's not word to word, of course, because their views are they saw slain till a set time. That's how I read it. That's how I see it. I don't know who can give me 100% proven explanation about it, but that's how I see it. So after after the beast will be slain, those who followed him will still get some time extension. So they will not be slain right away. Now, in verse 17, we see first-time appearance of what is called in this specific chapter Son of Man. Who is called Son of Man? With the cloud of the heaven, one like a Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was brought before him. Now, Ancient of Days here we understand now it's Father, and Son of Man, yes, for us is easier to understand. It's Jesus. Now, that's why you see in New Testament, a few times Jesus refers to himself as Son of Man. This is exactly where it's coming from. So you know the source. It's from Daniel. At least Daniel first time mentioned. Of course, Daniel is not the source of this idea. It just was revealed through Daniel first time to us. And Son of Man receive eternal dominion. It's in verse 14. So he will be the ruler. And let's just examine why actually, just think about why Jesus called himself Son of Man in New Testament. So why he's referring to himself as Son? He refers a few times in a different way, but one of the ways he refers is also Son of Man. So is it due to humility that he wanted, I'm also like you, I'm Son of Man? Not really. It's a title. It underlines his divine nature in his appointment as a heavenly judge. Because we know from Daniel, he will sit with the Father and he will be given dominion. So when he calls himself Son of Man, it's a hint, it's a title that tells us this is what will happen. He will be the one who will be given the great dominion. Okay? So now we know. It's very nice when see the two books are tied very much together, and reading Old Testament explains quite a lot in the New one, and vice versa as well. Sometimes, we have already insight because we read New Testament. Some things may be a bit easier for us in Old Testament to understand, but imagine Daniel, all right? The stress. Verse 18, the high holy ones, I think saints, will receive the kingdom, and they will inherit kingdom forever and to eternity. And this is very much similar to what John in Revelation tells as well. Now, so how are the last days related to four kingdoms? Sorry, it's typo here, should be plural. And when these kingdoms are gone already, but we are not in the last days, right? So remember, in a perspective that was given to Daniel, four kingdoms, changing one after another, four beasts, and then the last days are coming, judgment, and the dominion is given to Son of Man, and after that, also to saints. But the four kingdoms for us already gone, right? The Roman Empire, well, almost 2,000 years, well, less than 2,000 years ago, let's say 1,500 for simplicity, 1,600 years ago disappeared. But we are, we're still in a different world. We are not in the world that he described as the last days, right? So, in his sequence, after Rome, the last days are starting. So that's a bit complicated for us, like kind of to envision, but this is how it works, I guess, in those revelations, that Roman Empire is foretelling, is a template, is foretelling of the world government. Because at that time, Rome was ruled almost all the known world, or definitely most of the known world to Jews at that time, right? And the people in Babylonians and the rest who were living in those territories. So they ruled in most of the world. So Rome is a foretelling of the world government, and an order that will arise in the last days and will be ruled by the beast of Revelation. It is a prophetic view. So it's not that in a timeline, last days are starting immediately after Roman Empire, okay? Yes, they will start after, but not right away. Now, in verse 21, Daniel looked at the horn, and it was like this waged war with the holy ones and overwhelmed them. So he examined the horn, and he sees that horn is fighting with the holy ones and, overwhelmed them. Remember the Revelation of John, similar. So the horn here, we can see for us, is Antichrist that will be given power to overcome the saints. There is no word Antichrist, of course. In the Old Testament, we just referring to the term from the New Testament. But it's absolutely the same, right? That's how he saw him. Daniel. Now, these saints that he's talking about, the holy ones that will be overwhelmed, they're not really church, right? But it's, of course, spoiler from New Testament. I don't see it in Old Testament. They are tribulation saints. They're the ones who came later. But that's, if we'll get one time, and we'll get one time to Revelation, book of Revelation, it's easy for you to connect. Okay, Daniel saw them. He saw them as holy ones. Of course, he didn't know that it's tribulation saints because it was not given to him. But part of the picture he saw. Now, the last horn. Verse 22. Until the Ancient of Days came and gave revenge to the high holy ones, meaning to the saints, tribulation saints, and the time arrived that the holy ones inherited the kingdom. So what it means for us is that the beast will rule till the Lord returns. Because until the Ancient of Days came and gave revenge. Okay? Sounds familiar, right? For New Testament readers. Verse 24, the last king that will arise after 10 will be different than the first ones and will humble 3 kings. That's, of course, part of what angel described to Daniel about why this last horn, lacked the 3 previous ones. And about the last horn, verse 25, and he will speak words against the Most High, and he will oppress the high holy ones, and he will think to change the times and the law, and they will be delivered into his hand until a time, 2 times, and half a time. Now let's come back. Remember when we were reading first 6 chapters, I asked you to remember that what God can do, He can change time and a few other things. And here in verse 25, what do we see? We see that this horn, or Antichrist by New Testament, will rule for time, 2.5 times, 3.5 years. And at the same time also, he will attempt to do what only God can do, right? To change times. How it will look to us, I don't know. I really don't know how you can change times, because I cannot imagine it, but who am I? I just live in a 3-dimensional world, right? Verse 26. And the judge shall be established, and they will remove his dominion to be destroyed and annihilated until the end. So dominion of the beast will be destroyed. That's all it means. And we are coming to the end. Verse 27, and the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under all heavens will be given to the people of the high holy ones. Its kingdom is a perpetual kingdom, and all dominions will serve and obey. So dominion over all the heaven's kingdoms will be given to saints, believers, forever. Okay, and that's ends the chapter 7. Very intense revelation. Even for us, it's not easy to process. Even it is, most of it is history, and just part of it is the future. But for him, it was most of it future. Just one line was from the present, the Babylonian Empire. He probably didn't even know what Greece is, right, at that time. Or maybe it was, but it was kind of, very uninfluential country or place. Now we'll proceed to next revelation, which is chapter 8.
Just before you go to 8,
Yep.
let's interact a little bit with chapter 7.
Sure.
Okay. You're going over the image.
Yep.
Head, chest, arms, legs,
Chest, arms
thighs.
is a statue, it's a dream number 2.
Right.
Sorry, chapter number 2, dream.
Right. Is it connected in any way to this chapter?
Yes, the sequence of the kingdoms is the same sequence that was represented in the chapter 2 by the dream that came to Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar couldn't interpret it and asked Daniel to interpret. Well, actually, Daniel brought his initiative forward because King Nebuchadnezzar was upset with his interpreters and wise men, and he threatened to kill all the wise men in his kingdom.
Right.
Yes, sequence is absolutely the same.
Okay, so now
Let's make it simpler for us.
I'm trying to make it simpler. Going through Daniel is quite intense. It will probably take someone 2-3 years to really learn, understand, detail all of that consistently, right? So chapter 2, we have the image. In chapter 7, we have an image again. And the image, we have these 4 nations.
Yep.
And then we have Babylon connected.
Babylon connected.
At the 4th?
Well, Babylon was the first that he said.
Okay.
Second as let's say number 4. If we're going from back, if we're going from the past, number 1, Babylon. Second, the Persia, Greece, and Rome.
Right. So you have Rome in the context there, right?
Yes.
I was looking at chapter 2, and I was looking at chapter 7, and I thought, okay, fine, let's talk about the Antichrist, the 3.5 years concept. Okay. And it mentioned in the text that he kicked out 3 nations to rise to the top.
Yep.
When you were doing your studies, what did you discover from that?
Well, if you're talking about, there will be it will return to the other chapters as well, because the same concept will be persisting. It's a foreshadowing of what is going to happen. Plus, there are 2 things there. One is, of course, reference to Antichrist, and at the same time, the same template applied to the person that for us was already in the past, for him in the future, and 300 at least years ahead, which is, just a second, the Antiochus Epiphany. We'll get to him, and I have some material about him a bit.
All right.
And Yep, he was, I would say, a ruler from one of those empires, which is Seleucid Empire, one of those pieces that remained from the Greek Empire. So it was before Roman Empire, right? So Alexander the Great conquered huge territories, died very young, 32 years old, okay? And then his empire breaks for 4 pieces. Then Seleucid Empire captured the biggest piece, and from this Seleucid Empire comes this Antiochus Epiphanes, who is actually was persecuting Jews, and we'll get to it, right? So, so 2 figures are given. One is in, let's say, 165 BC, roughly those years, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, and another one that in the future, which is Antichrist, right?
All right.
They're connected. They're not the same. One is, and you can see sometimes in Old Testament, you can see the characters of some evil people coming up again and I would say presenting themselves in a different person. Or even not, or for example, in the Old and New Testament, not about evil, but about, let's say, righteous people, Eliyahu. That's, you know, people were thinking that the Jesus is him, remember, right? That it's one of the prophets from Old Testament, right? So, of course, Jesus said, I'm not, right? And they also came to John the Baptist. Are you that prophet? No, I'm not. But and Jesus said, if you believe that he is, then he is, but he is not. So, so we see sometimes the references to these characters, right? The same is here, unfortunately, on the negative side.
Okay.
All right?
The reason why I'm doing this too is because the study of Daniel and Revelations is humongous. I mean, it could take a lifetime to fine-tune some of that in my mind. Create in your mind an image, head of gold, chest, breastplate, arms, and the different parts. And if you notice that the quality of the precious stones, let me call it, or gifts, deteriorated as they get further down. True? Gold, next,
Yep.
next. Connect that then to the nations. What does that mean? Well, in your mind, you're thinking, if that is gold, the next one is silver, not as valuable to the top. How does that reflect into the concept of the nations that follow?
They're not grandiose, meaning the most flashy is Babylon.
Right.
And the rest are less grandiose. But if you get to, actually I reflected it when we were going in the previous week on the first 6 chapters. The Rome was represented by iron clothes, iron teeth, iron legs, on those symbols. The strongest, the hardest metal known at that time, right? So he was representing that the Rome will be, or for us was, the strongest empire.
Right.
Right? Not flashy, but you know, very strong.
And very rigid.
Yes, it
Okay.
was very strong, and and then the fourth beast. Remember, he was the most horrendous. He didn't even give description to what exactly beast of the nature it reminds him.
Right.
He just said it's horrendous, very scary beast. They were the vicious ones, right?
And they got very much worse as they went down. Right? Let me go back again. And the reason I'm doing that is because let's assume we don't get a chance to go through Daniel and Revelations as a study. I remember years ago we did a whole study in Daniel and we went through Revelations and so forth. That took quite some time to do that. What I would like us to achieve at the end of all of this, art is a great experience for you too. It's fantastic and I'm happy for you.
All right.
Is this. A simple overview, an overview of what the future would look like, actually got started when we started with the Daniel thing. Follow me there? The beginning of it. So there are going to be some repeats in certain ways, but the continuation of the things will get worse that leads up to the Antichrist. So when you were doing the fourth beast and he actually speak out of his mouth, this kind of stuff, what would the Antichrist be like? You got to keep that in the back of the mind because we are moving towards that. very seriously move into the control of the Antichrist. I was thinking just recently, in fact, on the news yesterday or sometime, they're talking about these people using this new technology and stuff, and they can actually do all this kind of stuff and take your whole bank account from you, and you don't even know that they left your ownership. The control of what man has will become less from man's point of view. We won't have very much control of what we have. When did it get all started? The process began through the discussion or the sharing that he's sharing with us way back, coming from the Babylonian Empire, Medo-Persian Empire, the Grecian Empire, and then you have their people. That continued as it went on, but it gets worse. And I think as you were going through that, I got very excited because I said to myself, Arthur is digging into this thing very deep and is trying to connect them to our present. And it could...
That's always, but that's why the book is given to us.
I got you. I know that.
It's not the mythology of Jews.
No, but it's interesting. And it may seem a bit confusing. And you're thinking, all of that? I may not remember all of this. The expectation is not for us to remember everything. The expectation is to get an overview and what we would be looking forward to. So I wanted to kind of do that. So sometimes we block our minds off when we're not understanding that. And I thought maybe we can find there's this book that I have, we can probably make a chart up and probably put it on the top. I'll try and get it to you, Clement. Just a little image of the beast.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, if you want to get one of those. For maybe next class.
I didn't put it, but I'll kind of maybe we'll.
And then we'll go through that and you can remind people, because when we see it, it becomes easy to remember. So we'll do that maybe for next week.
Maybe not the beast, maybe the statue, you mean. Because beast...
Yeah, sorry, the statue. That's what I meant, the statue. You're doing fine.
Beasts are four different ones. Statue is like...
Yeah, I meant the statue that's there. And we can separate where the things are and remind people, this is the Babylonian Empire, this is that, this is that, this is the other thing. Some of you may have it from past handouts that you may have received long time ago, but the point is, if we don't understand it and then make the application to now, we may miss exactly what's happening among us. All right? So I'll let you go back to some of that.
With the last iron clause, that's for sure.
Go on.
It will be painful. We're not going to miss it.
Gotcha.
Well, we might be, of course, tempted to miss, but that's a different story. All right. So chapter 8, the next vision. Now it's happening 3rd year of Belshazzar in Shushan Susa. Actually, you know what? I can even show you where Shushan Susa... it's actually, if you imagine Iraq, and there's great two rivers, so it's on the southern part of it. Today's Iraq. At that time, it was Babylon. And so the vision of a ram and the goat. Now, we'll do a recap here. Verse 3 and 4, a ram was standing before the river. One of its horns was higher than the other. And the higher one sprouted last. And the ram was going westward, northward, southward, and no beast could withstand before it, and it grew. So now, coming back, now we are looking at the ram as Medo-Persian Empire. So with two horns, and one is bigger than another. And by historical fact, yes, Persia was the strongest part of this Medo-Persian. So Medo-Persian Empire was like a dual empire, right? But Persia had much more influence. There was the stronger ones. So it's one horn bigger than another. And verse 5. And here I'll just go from Tanakh. He-goat came from the west over the surface of the entire earth. So he-goat, meaning the goat. And it did not touch the ground. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. Now, let's notice. He coming from the west, right? So let's maybe, do you want a map? So I'll just get back to the only problem with the maps that I need to roll back to my presentation. But you will imagine the Medo-Persia, where it is, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, right? This is Medo-Persia in brief, right? And then west of it, what? Is Europe, right? Who is coming from Europe, or Europe of today, is Greece. So he-goat is the Greek Empire, and it's coming from the west. So it's very accurate. And actually, it's true. I actually read that at that time, I don't know why, but maybe Greeks were using goats a lot, but they were sometimes called as goat people too, right? Maybe they were specializing in agriculture, in goats a lot. I don't know, but that was the nickname. And so he was coming without touching the ground. It means he was coming very fast. So we see similar as with the beast. Remember the leopard who was with the wings, so very fast advance. Here's the goat going very fast. And verse 6-7, the goat struck the ram and broke both of its horns, and the ram had no strength to stand before it. So the ram, we remember it's Medo-Persian Empire, and the goat is Greece Empire. So it struck the ram, basically defeated the Medo-Persian Empire. And the goat grew in size, and its horn broke, and 4 horns sprouted. Remember, we already discussed it. When Alexander the Great died, his generals divided his empire to 4 pieces. Here we see again, the horn broke, it's Alexander the Great, and 4 horns sprouted. There's 4 generals taking over the whole empire and breaking into pieces among themselves. All right. Verse 9, and from one of them emerged a small horn, and it became very great to the south and to the east and to the coveted land. So coveted land, we can guess here it's Israel. So again, the piece of the empire of Greece, we see emerging small horn, and it's expanding southeast into Israel. And this is Seleucid Empire. We'll just look at this. So a horn expanding southeastern southeastern Israel is actually representing Antiochus Epiphanes' falls as a king of Seleucid Empire. And we'll just talk about it. I know Pastor Raymond wanted me to talk about him a bit before, but I kept it for the chapter 8 because it's specifically about him. So it's a king of Seleucid Empire, the biggest portion of Greek Empire. He also captured other territories from other kings. So there were constant wars back and forward. And he was one of the most cruel rulers in history. He rose in power by murdering his brother. And he suppressed Judaism, commanded to burn copies of Torah. And he also caused, with his atrocities, of course, not that he planned it, but his atrocities caused revolt known as War of Maccabees. And he also captured Jerusalem and desecrated the temple by setting an altar to Zeus inside the temple and sacrificing pigs there, and commanded Jews to bow to his statues. Worship. And Hanukkah, meaning of it, I put it there even in Hebrew and in English, it's dedication. Dedication to God, or dedication to be so dedicated to fight the war. We can look at both ways, right? So the more I learn about New Testament and Old Testament, the more I learn about Jewish traditions and other ones, and kind of it all comes to more clear picture, right? Thanks to the words of God. Verse 10, and it grew, we're talking about the horn, and it grew until the hosts of heaven, and it cast down to the ground some of the hosts and of the stars and trampled them. So hosts here, I don't think it's angels, but it's most likely God's people leaders. So basically this horn, Antiochus Epiphanes, defeated leaders of the people, most likely of Israelis. But we shall remember then, of course, the parallels that we talk about between Antiochus Epiphanes and forthcoming Antichrist, right? That Antichrist will defeat the saints of tribulation, right? For a time, for a set time. Verse 11, and until the prince of the hosts it grew, and through him the daily sacrifice was removed, and the base of his sanctuary was cast down. His sanctuary, of course, with capital, it's God's sanctuary, not Antiochus' sanctuary. So it's basically repeating the history that we just discussed a few minutes ago. Antiochus removed Jewish leaders, and he stopped daily sacrifices, and he defiled the temple. Right? So his sacrifice was removed, and the base of the sanctuary was cast down. Same will be if you remember from the New Testament, who will be ruling in Jerusalem for 3.5 years, or even more, for 7. Yeah. They go together here. Verse 12, recap. A time will be set for the daily sacrifice to discontinue because of transgression, and the truth will be humbled because God allowed it. So what it means is, yes, it's all temporary, and it's because God allows it to happen. Why he allows it, we can only kind of speculate. I look at all of this as a big, I would say, project of changing people, right?